So we're going to start with some quick introductions from our panel. So I'm going to ask you all to say in 30 seconds who you are and what you do. So start at the end.
Hi, so my name is Moritz, Mayrhofer, as you can see up there. So I work with Booking.com Experiences, joined the team 3 years ago when they first launched the platform. So I manage the UK and Ireland market for our experiences, so onboarding new experiences. It's all very fresh, so quite a lot to do. Before that, I came from Singapore, where I worked for a company called Be My Guest, which is sort of like I suppose you'd call it a Viator, but for the Southeast Asian market. And that was a startup as well, so I worked there for 4 years, building up their B2B sales across the world. Yep, that's me.
Hi, my name is Chus. I'm not sure if the microphone is working. Good. Coming from an Icelandic company called TourDesk that we recently came to Scotland. We created a sales platform that connects activity providers with hotels, creating a concierge tool. This is what I was expecting. Creating a concierge tool for the hotels to be able to book all those activities for their guests in a live environment. Working quite well.
Thank you, Chus.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris. I work for Musement. I do almost exactly the same as Moritz for the last 3 years as well. But I focus on UK and Ireland. Before that, I was in adventure travel. I started in the industry in adventure travel for Intrepid. I've worked for Secret Escapes, Flashpack, Voyage Privé, and a bit of consultancy as well. But day-to-day job now is just driving growth for Musement in the UK and Ireland territory.
Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the head of brand marketing at Tiqets. We're a company that's focused on making culture more accessible by connecting people like you with visitors from around the globe. I manage our digital channels such as social media, the blog, email marketing across those various marketing platforms. Before this, I worked at Eventbrite, where I helped event creators with their marketing strategies, so actually quite similar lessons from the event industry to the tourism industry. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
And last but not least.
Thank you. And I'm Patrick O'Shaughnessy. I work in the engagement department. And myself and all my colleagues help out businesses with very basic advice on quality, on how to access international markets, digital, sustainability, and accessibility. So lots of help that we can give you as small businesses.
Okay, so I think we will start. So the first thing we're going to talk about is top tips for increasing bookings via mobiles. We know how important that is. We talked about that right at the beginning. So I wonder, Rachel, if you're a good person to start with that.
Yes, I'm happy to. So when I think about increasing sales via mobile, there's really two main parts. So the first is driving more traffic through mobile, and then the second is converting that traffic into actual orders, right? So if you start with driving traffic, really think about the mobile-first platforms that you have a marketing presence on, and that's probably more than you expect. So nowadays, more email is opened on phones than on desktop. More Google searches are done on phones than on desktop. So these marketing channels you might not have considered mobile first, but they truly are. And then there are the usual suspects like Facebook and Instagram. So when you're thinking about all of those, for example, email. How does your email look on a phone? It's a very basic question, but you need to make sure your text is large, you have very clear buttons, you're keeping things short enough so that it is a very easy process on the phone. When it comes to Facebook and Instagram, are you using features like linking on Instagram? You can do that through your stories or through your profile. If you don't have 10,000 followers yet on your stories, you can do it through Instagram TV. There are various backhole methods that you can do to drive links on those channels. And what we saw at Eventbrite is that they eventually invested in buy tickets buttons for events because they saw so much traffic going through. So if I had to predict, I would say in another year or two, we'll have those sort of buy tickets buttons on those platforms as well. So you can really capitalize on that. And then finally, Google, of course, showing up at the top of search results. Search engine optimization is very important, but also partnering with an OTA. We were the first to launch with Reserve with Google back in 2018 so that you can make sure your attraction or museum shows up at the top and is bookable in a few clicks. And then that brings me to conversion on mobile. A Ticketmaster study saw that there was a 160% lift in purchases that were completed when a purchase process was mobile optimized. So that's a huge, drastic increase. You really need to make sure that it's something that doesn't require pinching and zooming, that is not going to be a pain to do on their phones, because many travelers are booking these things in destination. At Tiqets, we see it's usually within 3 days of attending, and the majority is mobile traffic. If you don't have the engineering support to make a mobile optimized purchase process, I know that can sound perhaps overwhelming. People like us do make that easier for you. So we have a booking engine that is mobile optimized that you can embed on your website very easily, and then it's available in 12 languages and an easy way to convert those visitors once you get them.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And I think we talked right at the beginning when I first came on about people booking something that day. Mm-hmm. That's when they want to do something. That's when it's raining or it's dry or whatever it is. Chris, I wonder if you've got anything to add to anything about tips for increasing bookings via mobile.
That was to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends whether we're talking about for your direct business or whether through an OTA. So I'll focus just on the OTA side.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is removing the complexity. So everything changes when we're talking about interacting through a mobile device. The rules or the laws of user experience will change. The way that people behave with mobile devices are slightly different. So as Rachel said, we do all that for you. You know, a lot of time is spent changing the way that your products are presented. But what we can't change is the complexity that's inherent in the product itself. So if you have too many options or things are on needs confirm or on request or specific details need to be taken, too much customization and personalization, then that creates too many obstacles for the customer to purchase through that device. So that's something that we have to be aware of. We don't want everything just to be the same and to be diluted in that way. But if you're thinking from a pure mobile driven perspective, then too much inherent complexity creates obstacles, and that's going to reduce conversion.
That's really, really good advice, and very easily has driven us on to our next top things businesses shouldn't do online. Moritz, I wonder if you can tell us what we shouldn't be doing.
Okay, sure. For doing online, I mean, there's a lot that you should do online, what you shouldn't do online. I mean, there's a couple of things when I saw this question I was thinking about. One of them is, of course, say anything that's really stupid, because that will be remembered these days forever. So don't do that. But one interesting one is don't forget to track the cost of all of your online marketing and understand what you're trying to achieve with it and whether or not it's achieving that. So an example is a lot of the time a company might say, you know, I want to get a lot of online marketing done because I want a lot of direct traffic. And, you know, there's always that challenge with OTAs, for example, or third parties where the attraction wants to go, okay, well, I want direct. And of course, there's a challenge there because the OTAs are, in their view, cannibalizing a lot of the time. And so they'll do a lot of SEM marketing, for example. But nowadays, that's very expensive to do. Specifically, it's, you know, what are you trying to target, and don't forget the cost of that. So there's always a cost on a click, and there's always a cost on a conversion. And if it's something that you're targeting where you find the cost is very high, don't forget to check which platforms you can use that specialize in that market. So for example, you know, just sitting here, you would immediately think, okay, for the European market, I would be looking at, well, Booking.com. I would be looking at Get Your Guide, for example, as another one. I'll mention Musement because you're sitting here. But, you know, if it's the American market, you know, who are you focusing on? You know, then you'd be looking at things like Viator, for example. So it's just, don't forget when you're doing online marketing to use the right channels. It's something that I think a lot of people really forget.
Yeah, Chus, I saw you nodding in huge agreement there with what was being said. Do you think there's anything else that we shouldn't be doing online?
Lack of strategy. We see that right now, the Google My Business thing that Patrick was mentioning before, it's obviously crucial. I will require the microphone. It's really better.
Thank you.
So we see that people are jumping into the marketing era, but it's a lack of strategy. It's good to fill up the website, make it mobile friendly, as he was saying, doing the Google My Business, but in reality, you need to plan in advance what your strategy is. And I think that's missing in the industry. I think all these providers that we're seeing here, many of them don't have that. So before starting doing anything, I will recommend to sit down, plan very well, because then you're going to be more selective on the market. Then you will do better your web design or not. As he was saying, now you need to design based on mobile and not the other way around. We used to do designs based on desktops and then adapting it to telephones. We see now that has to change, has to be the other way around. So
Yes.
just planning the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got to make sure that you've got that planning. So we've now got our planning all in place, and we want to use direct messaging. So what are the top ways for using direct messaging? Patrick, shall we start with you?
I think it's
quiet.
It's clear that our visitors more and more like to direct message. They want that instant response to that instant thought in their planning process. So we have to hold that clear that they want to do that. And therefore, if we want to be successful, we need to offer them the opportunity to do that. And we need to manage that. I think that's the single biggest challenge, because lots of you are single man outfits out there. So are you going to be prepared to answer a message at 11 o'clock at night from an American who wants to get a little bit more detail? And that's what direct messaging is about. So somehow create the plan that you're able to respond in a way that you align with people's expectations. Because if you send something out, if a visitor sends you a message that you have the widgets on your website and they don't get a response until 2 days later, you're really not fulfilling what they want. One other very, very small thing with that, but something Stephen, I'll blame him as the expert, I found out even yesterday. On direct messaging on Facebook, they measure you as a business as to how long you respond, how it takes you to respond. So a visitor that looks at Facebook, they're able to see that it takes you a day to respond. They're going to say, oh my God, their customer service is awful. Actually, Facebook measure you on the last response. So if someone says, hi, I'm Ellen, I need to find out what time your tour starts, you go back and say, it starts at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. They come back and say, thank you. Facebook are still timing you such that you have to get the last word in. So you just go give them a thumbs up. So ideally, this totally suits females in the audience, because you get your last word in. But think of it all the time. So a little small word. That's what you told me, Stephen, yesterday. That's fine.
So, Rachel, let's see if the female always wants to get the last word in. Do you have any advice that you can give about direct messaging?
Yeah, so to build off of the point of there's an assumption of an immediate response. So there are tools that you can use to alleviate that. So there are many quite sophisticated chatbots out there now that are not that expensive to implement. So Intercom is one brand that I've used in the past, and it's a very intuitive user setup. And essentially what you can do is you can make sure that the frequently asked questions that you get have automatic responses, and it's smart enough to know if someone phrases something differently that they're still asking that same question and feed that information back to them. And then it only surfaces to you if you reach that end of what that chatbot knows. So that's a way, and then at that point you could say, we'll get back to you within an hour, within whatever the time frame that's reasonable is. So that's something that's nice to implement, certainly if you have a customer support page on your website, but you can also implement it on your booking page, for instance, because that could be a way to drive more conversions. It's a tool that we use at Tiqets as well. We use both Intercom for chatbot, and we also use WhatsApp for customer service requests, which can be a nice channel. And then we do use SMS, but that's largely in the ticket confirmation. So if you're talking about direct message through text, I would be quite conservative with it. It's something that's quite intimate to the consumer, so you don't want to spam them with marketing messages or anything like that. But if it's the ticket confirmation, for instance, which is what we do, it can be quite easy for someone to then access when they don't have data or Wi-Fi because they're on a trip and maybe they didn't invest in that mobile plan. So I would say necessary information over those very direct channels, and then investing in a tool that can help you query those answers without taking as much manual time.
And maybe to book the trend, I wonder if one of the gents would like to have the final word on that direct messaging. Have any of you got any top tips on how we should be using direct messaging or the best ways to use it?
Well, I was
Chris?
going to say exactly what Rachel said.
All right.
Almost word for word.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I guess she does get the last word.
I did give you the opportunity, all three of you. So moving on now, because we're talking about all these things we can do. We know that there's some sole operators here and smaller businesses. So just thinking about free digital tools that everyone can check out there. Chris, can you give us any pointers on that?
I could spend hours on this.
We've got 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll try and be brief. But
Yeah.
I mean, not so much from the digital marketing perspective, but just in terms of your own processes. For project management, tools like Asana and Trello and I mean, when I first discovered it, it changed my life. You know, to be able to just put all the ideas and everything that's happening within your organization into just one place where everyone can see everything changes everything. Little things like the number of add-ons that you get with Google Sheets, for example, people just seem to forget about. But you can really run a business through Google Suite if you really need to. And then actually on the digital marketing perspective, the one tool that I do enjoy is something called SpyFu, where you can see a competitor's ad spend using some clever algorithms. So it's always nice to have a little look and see what your competition are doing in certain markets.
Yeah, definitely. And just thinking about other things that you can use and thinking about all these free tools, is there anything out there that we're missing that we haven't mentioned? Because, you know, it is really important and, you know, not to be scared. And it sounds like there's so much out there, but when you're, you know, busy away doing everything that you're trying to do, it's easy to miss them or not have the time. So would there be one... You know, you've talked about several tools there. Is the one go-to? What do you think in terms of...
Google Analytics, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's number 1, 2, 3, Google Analytics.
Yeah.
We have Google Keyword Planner as well for Google Ads and so on, but without analytics, you can't deal with the other one previously. So that's a must in every business for marketing now.
Yeah.
I think, and on top of that, there's Google have changed the name now, but it's now called Google Search Console. Really, again, businesses are not aware of that. There's some brilliant stuff in there. Again, Leonore mentioned about the queries, but actually there's even more detail in terms of what people are searching for in terms of that queries that surface you. It also has a brilliant tool that you can actually put the URL in to check if that page is working, and it'll give you a report back. That's very, very useful. So simple tool, free. One to look at to add to your...
I'd add on to that as well with, because this is looking at a lot of external data, but don't forget to analyze your own data as well. You know, a lot of insights from your own customers that you can build on. So another Google product. Google Sheets is another one. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Excel, and you have to pay for Excel. You don't, you can use Google Sheets. They do the same thing roughly.
Yeah.
But Google Sheets it's incredibly powerful. I mean, in our team at Booking.com, I mean, we have access to a system called Tableau, which is supposed to be really, really great for a lot of data insights and things like that. We just created a really complex Google Sheet to generate some really interesting graphs and insights and do a lot of comparisons. And you can get a lot of really, really interesting information if you build it properly. But you have to go in knowing what you want to get out of your data insight, or what are you trying to understand about the customer. And if you have enough data on your own side from your own audience, you can learn a lot. It is infinitely powerful. So I definitely would recommend not just looking at external data, but your own customer, learn more about your own customer through this tool, which is completely free.
Yeah. And again, it's back to the planning. I know we talked earlier about planning. And is it quite an easy tool to use?
It's as easy as you want it to be. I mean, you can get some, one thing, it's all based around pivot tables and things like that, but first of all, there's a lot of information online on how to use Google Sheets. I mean, they've put a massive amount of tutorials online, and you can find information on pretty much on how to do anything. But for that, you can get really, really detailed with Google Sheets if you want to. You can, but you don't have to. I mean, it'll do a lot of recommendations on it. It's pretty clever. I mean, it'll look at your own data and go, hey, well, we think maybe you should look at this. Yeah. But there is. I was trying to remember it. Maybe somebody in the audience or on stage will remember. But there's a startup which has just been valued very highly, which is recreating Google Sheets, a very simplified sort of drag and drop way of analyzing data. I can't remember, it was valued just last week or something like that. But there are some new tools coming out which also look at this, because they understand that that's a big question, is, well, this feels complicated. You know, how much do I need to learn something new? And if the person that is doing it leaves, what do I do then? So.
Yeah, that's really useful. Chus, did you want to add something there?
Do you guys know Click, written with Q? Is anyone using Click here? It's an artificial intelligence data collector that is, for us at least, it's crucial. It's basically doing what you are saying with Sheets, but it automatically collects it.
Nice.
So you can literally classify, we can see who is selling what, time frames, activities, providers, in few clicks. It connects directly through API. So it tracks all the information automatically, and it is free. It's a bit more technical, but if someone wants more info, I can pass it later.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
If I could add on quickly,
Yes, of course.
just don't underestimate, there are a lot of freemium models out there, which means that a tool might cost quite a bit of money at the enterprise level, but you can use it for free at a different level. And so there are tons of tools that you can use that way. One I recommend is Lumen 5 for easy video creation. You don't need to have ever made a video before to make one in about 10 minutes on this platform. That's great for social media content. Also, if you wanted a pop-up on your website, Hello Bar has a premium model. You can do an exit intent pop-up. So if someone's there and is about to leave, you have a better chance of converting that person. So just a couple examples, but there are many.
I have just one more. I told you it would happen. So.
I know.
But Canva for the same thing. Canva has
great.
put so many graphic designers out of work. But for small businesses that don't want to have to spend hundreds of pounds for graphic design, go in there using the templates. My 10-year-old son uses it all the time and makes really good logos. So if he can do it, anyone can do it. It's incredible.
It's really, really useful. And as I say, I think people are frightened. It was useful to know you can go in at different levels and have those free tools. So thank you very much for that. So finally, we're going to talk about top trends coming your way. And I'm going to go round all 5 of you for you to tell us what the trends are, the up-and-coming trends. So I'll start at the end.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, trends is cool. There's a lot of really good stuff coming out. But the biggest, I suppose the biggest trend that we see is this massive shift towards last minute. It's insane. And it comes with a lot of challenges. So just to throw out some interesting stats. So with Booking.com experiences, what we see in terms of our audience and when they're booking the experiences that we offer, first of all, it's something like 60 to 80% mobile, which is massive. And around 80% of those are booking in destination. They are not planning their trips in advance, or even if they are, they're not booking them in advance. They want to make the decision on the day. A huge majority of our bookings that we see, and just because there's a lot of data from Booking.com, I won't say that, I won't assume that it's a reflection of the general market trend. I don't want to say that or promise that, but there's a lot of data that we have access to, and it really shows the majority of bookings are happening on the day or the day before. But most of the bookings are on the day. In the morning, they're opening up the guides, they're deciding what to do for that day, and they're making the booking for that day. And that's such a crucial trend, because if you are on request or you are not connected through a channel manager, they're a hot topic these days because of this probably, then it's a possible problem. It's something that really should be looked into. Are you bookable on the same day? And if you're not, how can you get bookable on the same day? Yeah. That's
really, really good to hear that. Chus.
So we see that in the time that reviews are everything, and we have TripAdvisor and Booking.com, and Google even reviews, then we see also fake news. And we're seeing the fake reviews now. Local knowledge is growing up a lot. People are not trusting that much anymore, unfortunately, certain reviews, but going back, disconnecting a bit and going back locally. We're seeing that we work a lot with hotels, of course. We see that when the guest actually comes, it doesn't matter what Google, TripAdvisor, etc. says about the best restaurant, you're going to ask the receptionist. You're going to ask, where should I go for a burger? Where should I go for a pint? Where's the best pub? So keeping that in mind and trying to use it somehow, it's becoming our strength at least. Going back to the local knowledge, putting a bit down knowledge on internet being king, but trusting more local people.
Yes. I mean, that's really good to hear, especially when we've been saying how important people are, and we are in a customer-facing industry. So it's,
we're talking a lot about how good we need to be on Google My Business and digital marketing, etc. But we're maybe forgetting about being good at the product.
Yes.
Having literally a good product, solid product,
Absolutely.
So. Yeah. Thank you for that, Chris.
It's interesting that Moritz was saying about the move towards last minute. Since we were acquired by TUI, our move has been the complete other direction because we're servicing travel agents, and so our booking window has gone from 24 hours, 48 hours to 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. We're having bookings now for late 2022 for some products. How anyone knows what they're doing in 2022, I have no idea. So that's interesting. I mean, it definitely depends on channels, distribution, markets, those kind of things. But one sort of thing I wanted to raise is that we all spend huge amounts of time thinking about the future, and it's by virtue of everything changes is so dynamic all the time. So we're always trying to guess what's going to happen. But I'm kind of interested to think about what isn't going to change. So what are the things that are permanent but might just require innovation? So what are the things that always stay the same? And I think it was sort of touched on. People are always going to want human contact. Even as everything becomes digital, there is always going to be this demand for human contact. And also when we talk about things like price, of course everyone wants great value, but I think there is always going to be a sector or a grouping or a cohort of people who are going to be price conscious. So as much as there's going to be innovation and fads, trends, mega trends and all these things, there's always going to be a few things that are going to be permanent. And so I'm more interested in how can we innovate in those areas rather than trying to predict things that either happen and then go away.
Yeah, I mean that is so true when you think about it, and it's yes, there's the here and now, but there's that longevity, and some products have that, and people want to do that. You don't need to be reinventing all the time.
Anna, what about you? What are the trends that are coming to your attraction?
I think certainly from the business where I'm at the Blackwatch Castle and Museum, we're definitely getting more people booking online. But what we find when people come in is they have done a lot of research before they've got to us, and they almost know as much about your business as you do as they walk in. So customers are really, really knowledgeable. So I think, for us and for any businesses, you need to look at, what are you saying to people online, and is it authentic? Is it true? Is that the what they are looking for? So we're definitely seeing that, but we are seeing people booking and booking because of the experience we are. Not necessarily on the day, maybe a few days before, but definitely they'll be coming in the near future. So, Rachel, what about trends from your point of view?
Yeah, so one thing that I've been seeing increasingly happen is more intimate experiences at more iconic attractions. So we talk a lot about experiences in this industry, and we also talk about the big museums and attractions that everyone knows. But we're actually seeing those start to merge in some ways that are quite interesting. So, for example, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam does an escape game now once a year for a month. Where they use actually chatbot technology on an app that they give you this phone to use while you're there. And it's this game where you go around, you pretend that there's a curator who is mysteriously fired, and you're this group of interns that are, under disguise and doing some investigation. But essentially what they do is they use this app to drive you to see all the things in the museum you wouldn't normally see. So it's quite an interesting way to gamify the experience, to make it feel more unique and appeal to a different audience, presumably a younger audience in this case than they might normally, but also to build some buzz. They get quite a bit of press around this sort of activation. Other examples might be, the Louvre working with Airbnb to do that night in front of the Mona Lisa, if you heard about that. That was obviously an OTA and a venue coming together to create a more experiential activity. You're also seeing venues use things like VR and other things to begin to modernize that experience. So really just seeing more creative uses of technology to bring those intimate experiences to even the most iconic of museums and attractions.
Thank you. That was really interesting. And Patrick, I wonder if you can give us a trend for us here in Scotland and.
Well, I'm sort of thinking slightly different from everyone else. Yes, there's this chase for the shiniest new thing, artificial intelligence, voice search, bots, and they have a place because we all need to stay in advance. But if there's one trend that I would suggest to all of you today is get the basics right. Just go back out and look at Google My Business. Check that you're mobile friendly. Check that your load speed on your pages are right. Check that you haven't loaded your website with everything you possibly can, because there's the one thing that Google say now is less is more. So just look at it, go through the basics. Use the tools that are out there like Google Mobile Search Speeds, Google Mobile Friendly Test. Those tools are there for you to quickly do a little health check, and it's amazing because everything changes so fast that there'll be one or two little things that you can tweak, get better, and make sure that you're returning and ultimately growing a bit better.
Thank you for that. So I just want to say a huge thank you, and I'm sure that you do, to the panel for sharing their top tips. And I'm absolutely certain that we must have all picked up at least one tip, but I'm sure many more. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh.